A cable news anchor who reports the facts even when they run counter to the beliefs of his network's opinion hosts and arguably a majority of its viewers. We honor a broadcast network correspondent who saw the inadequacies of our federal government's response to a natural disaster affecting Americans, most of whom don't speak our language and don't enjoy the right to vote. And he has worked tirelessly to help those people by shining a light on their problems ever since. We honor the president of a broadcast and digital news network that exemplifies the very best of high-quality, impactful journalism. A local television sports anchor whose eloquence and piercing observations about various aspects of life in his community have catapulted him to national prominence as one of the most important voices and consciences of our time. An intrepid group of network journalists, many of them relatively new to covering stories on a national stage, who forayed into the deepest crannies of the United States to help Americans better understand the issues most important to their fellow Americans during the 2018 election cycle. A cable news network that, because of the rhetoric and even the official actions of our nation's highest elected leader, has become to far too many the very emblem of the enemy of the American people, yet demonstrates on an hourly basis that it is anything but. We also gather tonight to thank an elected official who stands up consistently to Supreme Court and Attorney General nominees and others to lend the power of her influential voice to the First Amendment's protections. And we remember with solemn gratefulness the work of American journalists and an American resident journalist we lost during the past year, needlessly, and only because they were doing their jobs, which proved inconvenient to some. In these days of an ever-widening political crevasse, in these days of an ever-broadening ideological chasm, we believe it is good, no, necessary, to gather at events such as this to remind ourselves that the work we do is so critical not just for the 330 million individual Americans or the 50 separate political entities of America, but for the United States of America, the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, no one in this room is a purveyor of fake news. No one in this room is an enemy of the American people. Thank you again for being here. Now on with the show. It's my pleasure to introduce the chairman of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation, a senior fellow at the University of Minnesota's Hubbard School of Journalism and Mass Communication, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Libben.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everyone. Time for a little transparency in the best journalistic sense of that term. RTDNF does not endorse political candidates. Our board of directors voted on our First Amendment Defender Award in January before we knew whether our recipient aspired to even higher office. Then, this happened. That, my friends, is an image that would make any Minnesotan a little homesick. Perhaps you saw some coverage of this event. A student of mine, in fact, was there to cover it, and here he is. I'm personally grateful for the lesson my student learned that day about something, to quote this evening's honored guest, that's called grit. Now that we've acknowledged the elephant in the room, or perhaps the donkey, let's move on. Our first award of the evening, the First Amendment Defender Award, is given to an individual who takes a steadfast public stand in support of press freedom, and tonight's honoree has done just that. Senator Amy Klobuchar has been a staunch defender of First Amendment freedoms for many years throughout her distinguished career. She has supported cameras in courts, worked to advance government transparency, and ensured protections for the press through oversight and accountability, including her recent questioning of then Attorney General designate William Barr. Her record represents exactly the sort of leadership RTDNF seeks to recognize. As a constituent of Senator Klobuchar and as someone who has led Minnesota newsrooms during the decades of her career, it is my honor to present the 2019 First Amendment Defender Award to the Honorable Amy Klobuchar.
Well, thank you, Scott. That was like really cool music. I feel like I really got the award. It is wonderful to be here with all of you, with my husband, John, who's also cares about the Constitution. He's a law professor. And all of the outstanding men and women of the Radio, Television, Digital News Association. Thank you. I'm truly humbled to receive this award. Many of you may know that my dad has a long career in journalism. In my house growing up, it was almost impossible not to understand the importance of a free press. He spent 43 years in journalism. He is 90 now, and I was just visiting him in assisted living where he introduced me to a woman at the front desk. This is my daughter. She holds an obscure job in the federal government. My dad once had one of the first TV talk shows, getting to your line of work, in Minnesota, and he would have guests. It was called Jim Klobuchar's Merry-Go-Round, and one of my favorites was he had a famous pro wrestler on who he let put him in a sleeper hold and knocked my dad out live on TV. They went to a commercial break and everything was fine. Then he also had one of the first talk radio shows while he was a columnist, and my mother would sort of like taunt him by calling in live all the time and asking him to pick up milk and eggs and groceries, and they would put it through and he'd get really mad. But he was really a journalist at the heyday of journalism. He got to cover everything from a prime minister's funeral in Italy to an occult convention in Minneapolis. He covered a nudist colony. He interviewed everyone from Ronald Reagan to Chicago Bears coach Mike Ditka to Ginger Rogers. And one of my favorite stories about him was in the 1960 election when he was with Associated Press. And the election, yes, thank you, yes, there you are. One person, thank you, yes. He was, they were up all night because California, Minnesota, and Illinois were still out. And actually California, if anyone remembers this, was miscalled originally for Kennedy, and it later went to Nixon. And so Minnesota was out. It was the next morning. There were these three guys working all night. And the northern Minnesota part where my dad is from, the Iron Range, was still outstanding. And my dad literally said to his colleagues, the area has as many bars as churches. It's a very Catholic area, and that Dick Nixon's prospects in northeastern Minnesota in 1960 were as bright as the temperance movement in West Duluth. So they end up calling the head of AP in New York. My dad's boss named Moses calls in and says, we're calling it for Kennedy. And the guy in New York, who I'd since met later, calls back to Moses and says, I've got 2 words for you 3 guys in Minneapolis that have been up all night. Be right. So they called it, my dad got to write the story, and literally page by page, he would send a sentence to the teletype operator because they didn't have carbon copies left. And the guy would keep yelling to him and my dad because they wanted to beat UPI. You know what this is like. And he kept calling to the teletype guy, how did that last sentence end? And the teletype guy, bleary after no sleep, would keep yelling back, with a period, Jim, with a period. And in fact, in a typical journalism style, they called the race. 13 minutes later, Reston of the New York Times wrote the story that Nixon had conceded, citing the Minnesota call. And so they celebrated. My husband actually found that article. Yes, very good. Come on. When we were writing my book. Yes. So then what happens is my dad, they celebrate in the newsroom. He goes out to lunch at a Swedish cafe. He comes back, and the very next story he's given as an assignment is that 3 pigs are stuck in a mud pit in Faribault, Minnesota. That is a true story. That is journalism. So a lot has changed since my dad in his heyday. How Americans get their news has changed to a 24-hour news cycle, as you all know, something that's gotten even more dramatic since the president came into office, to a minute-by-minute Twitter feed, charged chaos. There is vitriol, there is attacks, as was just mentioned, directed at journalists, and they've reached levels that we have never before seen in the United States of America. We've seen them internationally, but not here. And even with these changes, your purpose, your mission, and your dedication to the truth has not changed. In fact, your job, in my mind, is more important than ever. And that is why I've worked so hard to support local broadcasting, local radio, as well as national. Part of this, as my former job as county attorney, I saw the difference it made when disasters came our way to get that news out there locally, whether we were searching for a suspect, whether we had, as we may have this weekend, right guys, floods in Minnesota. Literally life and death. When that bridge collapsed, the 35W bridge collapsed, there was literally notices out right away of where people should go. And there is no other way to deliver that kind of news except locally with TV and radio. That's why I've worked very hard in the Congress to make sure that the FCC is held accountable, that broadcasters have the resources they need, that local television stations remain strong. Last Congress, an additional $1 billion for spectrum repacking, woo-hoo, on top of the already $1.75 billion. Okay, there we go. That would be called sordid applause, all right? And while time and technology changes, my commitment to strong radio and broadcast will not. It was Thomas Jefferson who wrote that the first objective of our democracy should be to leave open all avenues to the truth, and the most effective way of doing this is through freedom of the press. And while it's true, as I mentioned, that the most extreme forms of antitrust behavior have been happening in places like Egypt or Iran or the Philippines, we have our own issues here at home with an administration that has suggested using the antitrust laws as a club against CNN right here in the front, a president who literally tweets whatever he wants every morning, and as someone noted, doesn't seem to respect the amendment that allows him to do it. Earlier this year, I asked administrative officials, including the now Attorney General, if they would commit to protecting journalists from being jailed for doing their jobs. They still have not made that commitment. I believe that's unacceptable. We must ensure that the Department of Justice continues to follow the guidelines that protect journalists, even when those journalists criticize the government, even when those journalists criticize a candidate. America deserves nothing less, and if we want to continue to be a beacon of democracy, we need a free press that has access to our government so that we, the people, can truly ensure transparency. That brings me to my last topic, which is cameras in the courtroom. Today, you can watch what happened in the Senate on C-SPAN. You can see city council meetings on your local stations, but you still can't watch the United States Supreme Court make incredibly important decisions every single day. We are beyond the horse and buggy days, okay? Like, we are beyond where maybe one senator gets in to watch the Affordable Care Act hearing. I just think it makes no sense. And when I've talked to my colleagues, when I've talked to the people on the court, many of whom I've gotten to know, having been involved in all of these Supreme Court hearings, I ask every one of them about it. They raise issues about security and things. I'm thinking, okay, people know what you look like. I today reintroduced with Senator Grassley the Sunshine in the Courtroom Act, which I think is very important to get the cameras in the courtroom. So that, plus protecting our democracy, a little thing that we must continue to do. We are all waiting, of course, for the Mueller report. I hope very much that report will be made public. Meanwhile, work must be done, and this is something that should matter to all of you. The bill that I had with Senator McCain, I now have 12 Republicans in the House, which is called the Honest Ads Act, that requires disclaimers and disclosures of political ads when they are online. Billions of dollars are going to be spent in 2020, and there's still no rules in place. That's bad for our democracy, but it also is not an even playing field for radio and TV and newspaper, and that is wrong. And by the way, if anyone asks you about meddling in our democracy, as you anchors out there, please don't use that word. That's what I do when I call my daughter on a Saturday night and ask what she's doing, right? So what that was an attack on our democracy. So in conclusion, without honest and trusted journalists reporting from the scene, what is out of sight truly becomes out of mind. You have seen that with newspapers breaking down in local areas where there's just no coverage of what's happening in local areas. And I'll close with this. A little over a month ago, I was asked to speak at a memorial event at the Capitol honoring Jamal Khashoggi, who, as you know, was murdered for simply doing his job. His daughters, Noha and Razan, said it best at another earlier service when they asked our country not to mourn, but rather to preserve his legacy. This is what they said: "This is no eulogy, for that would confer a state of closure. Rather, this is a promise that his light will never fade, that his legacy will be preserved within us." So I accept this award today, not only because my dad would be really mad if I didn't accept it, but also because I take those beautiful words as a guide, that in these challenging times, it is up to all of us, you doing your job, us doing our job, to carry on that light and to ensure that our democracy endures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Now please join me in welcoming our Master of Ceremonies for the evening, Chief Justice Correspondent for ABC News, Pierre Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here tonight. And for some reason, when there are nights like this, the news gods always conspire against me. I told my wife, I said, you know, on this big night, I would like to go to work, have a very quiet day, eat lunch, go over the scripts, think about journalism, think high thoughts. And then today, there was a little thing called the Manafort sentencing, and I just filed for the evening news. Actually, World News Tonight with David Muir. Shameless plug in for our president, who's sitting right there and who will be honored tonight. You know, I was thinking that I should give you a bit of warning and encouragement. As your host, I happen to be a black man who grew up in the black church. And I really identify with black preachers. In fact, my brother is a black preacher. The warning is that black ministers, at least where I'm from, can be a little long-winded. But the good news is that you can hurry me along with a few amens, and there you go. It works. and nods of encouragement. Amen. Yes, amen. In all seriousness, let me begin by saying what an honor it is to share this night with all of you. A heartfelt thanks to the RTDNF for asking me to participate in such a special evening. When I was contacted by Kate about tonight, I took a deep breath and I thought about this critical moment. There's so much division, so much cynicism out there, including about the media and the press. And I came to the conclusion that what we're doing here tonight is so meaningful. We're here to celebrate the free press, the pursuit of excellence, and to honor sacrifice. Tonight is truly about celebration and reflection. There's never been a time where being aggressive, but fair, but most importantly, right. There's never been a time when it's been more urgent. I've always believed that journalism at its highest form is public service, providing the citizenry with knowledge which allows them to participate in our great democracy and to make the best decisions in their own lives is so important. That is noble. Don't let anyone fool you. The people here that we are honoring tonight are the best of the best, standard bearers for our industry, sentinels of a free press and the First Amendment. The work we do, when it truly makes a difference, always requires sacrifice. Sometimes it involves travel to faraway places, time in meetings, time with sources, deadlines. In short, it costs us time away from family and loved ones. And tonight, we will honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, who lost their lives to the cause of the First Amendment and the freedom of the press. I applaud everyone we honor tonight and everyone who took the time out of their busy schedules to be here. In fact, before we get started, I would like everyone to applaud each other, to be unified in the belief that what we do every day matters and that we can stand together to make our profession all it should be. So just indulge me a moment and stand up and applaud yourselves and the free press. Come on now. We're family here. Come on. Praise your peers for a job well done. Stand up and let's be thankful and grateful and happy about a free press. Stand up if you love journalism. Stand up if you value the free press. Stand up in love of each other. And while no words can soothe the loss of the fallen we honor tonight, this evening we can celebrate their spirit that lives on in every journalist working today. The love of the pursuit of the story, the love of truth, no matter the cost. Yes, there's much to celebrate tonight, and for those who have made that ultimate sacrifice, they certainly did not die in vain. They did not die in vain. We're not going to let that happen. So with that, we begin. The RTDNF citation of courage represents distinguished service in the interest of journalism and extraordinary courage in the pursuit of truth. This year, we honor two extraordinary recipients. Jamal Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian author and columnist for the Washington Post, who was assassinated at the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. Initially, the Saudi government denied the death, but a number of U.S. senators have said on a bipartisan basis that there is considerable evidence that Khashoggi's assassination was ordered by the Crown Prince. In 2018, Khashoggi was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year for his courage in the face of political persecution in the pursuit of journalism. Here to accept the award in honor of Jamal Khashoggi is the Washington Post editor of Global Opinions, Karen Attiah.
Hi. Thank you so much for the award. I don't have a whole lot to say. I worked with Jamal very closely and recruited him to the post. And I think the one thing that I still keep in mind and what I'm still recalling is that all he wanted to do was write. That was something when he came to the post, when he took selfies in the newsroom, his eyes lit up like he was at Disney World. He'd been barred from tweeting, from blogging, from writing for so long that the ability for him to just express himself freely was something that he cherished. And the idea that he lost his life for the work that he was doing with us is something that is still painful for me, for his friends, and for his family. But the one thing I'd like to say is the Post obviously has been committed to keeping his legacy alive, keeping his name out there, pressuring for answers and for accountability. And I would just like to thank everyone else in the room, that it wasn't just a Washington Post effort. It was the effort of journalists collectively around the world, from CNN to the New York Times, the BBC, the entire global journalism community rallied, and for that, I know I'll be forever grateful. And I think Jamal, I wish he could be here to see this. All he just wanted was for his words to be read. So thank you all, and I hope that you all continue to support accountability for his murder and to continue to support the freedom for the Arab world that he desperately wished for and lost his life for. So thank you so much.
It truly is a bittersweet night. Our second Citation of Courage Award is presented to the 5 employees of the Capitol Gazette who were victims of a mass shooting at the newspaper's headquarters. Robert Khashoggi. Robert Khashoggi was an associate editor at Capitol Gazette, a storyteller and writing mentor for decades worth of reporters. He's one of the newspaper's best-read columnists, and his quirky take on life were a regular feature of the Sunday Lifestyle section. Gerald Fishman. Gerald Fishman was the editorial page editor of the Capitol Gazette for 26 years, managing what for many readers is the heart of the news organization. He was considered the voice of the newspaper, writing thousands of Our Say editorial pieces. Wendy Winters. Wendy Winters was a community institution, working as a freelance writer, community columnist, staff writer, and editor for over 15 years. John McNamara. John McNamara was a longtime sports writer for the Capitol Gazette who covered University of Maryland basketball and merged into the role of covering Bowie, Maryland. Rebecca Smith. Rebecca Smith was an administrative assistant for the sales department, working to serve advertising clients. She also played an important role as events coordinator for the paper. To learn more about these remarkable people and the dedicated staff of the Capitol Gazette, let's watch.
When I walked out of the building that day, I thought the paper was dead.
I thought it would be the first time that I ever worked at a newspaper where there was just one day where there just wasn't a newspaper.
We're the people who report on this, like what's going to happen.
I remember getting there and seeing Josh and Pat, and we got to work. And so in my head, I kept thinking, how do we do this? Not necessarily, will it happen or won't it happen?
When Chase sent his tweet out and I saw that tweet, I said, damn straight, we're putting the paper out. There's no question about that. It was never a question in my mind. It was never a question in anyone's mind.
But we had a lot of other things that we were dealing with as well. We were concerned about who was okay, who wasn't okay. We still didn't know exactly how many fatalities that we had had.
When I got the call from Rick that night and he said, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow, you don't have to come, but if you want to work, we're going to be at the Baltimore Sun. I mean, I knew it was back on, like, not just for the next day, but for as long as we could do it.
Chase Cook and Celine Sanfelice and I gathered in a conference room on the 3rd floor of the old Calvert Street building.
Because people want to be here because they want to do something, and they want to show themselves and everybody else that they can do this. So they're here, and I want to be here, and I want to do the same thing.
The next day, we met as a group, I think about 20 of us, at Dave Broughton's house.
48 hours after the shooting, we were all together, pretty much, a lot of the newsroom anyway.
Rick was writing the editorial for Sunday's paper.
I wrote an editorial committing to continuing publishing the paper, and we all signed it. Starting with that Sunday, you started seeing the local bylines coming back.
It's been a challenge, and we've made some changes along the way.
But yeah, I didn't really pick up a camera. Well, that's not true. I did pick up a camera because the Tuesday after the thing happened, the Stanley Cup came to the office, and I photographed that, and I got pictures in the paper the next day. I was off. It was just I came to see the Stanley Cup, and but it felt good to take pictures.
Like we joke and like we make fun of each other, and we don't sit in there like very solemn and like crying all the time because you just can't and you don't want to.
These are people that I know I'll be tied with for the rest of my life. And, I'm really glad because they're all really good people.
I am not the writing coach that Rob Hyacin is. I am not the editorial writer that Gerald Fishman was. Certainly can't cover sports anywhere near the way John McNamara could. I don't know half as many people as Wendy did.
And Rebecca Smith was simply the nicest of us all.
We will never be the paper we were. But we will be better than we are now.
Here to accept the Citation of Courage Award for the Journalist of the Capital Gazette is editor Rick Hassell.
I actually own a tuxedo. But my day started at 7 o'clock with 63 high school students who we named Outstanding Academic Achievers. And if you ever want to have a moment of, I really didn't live up to my full potential, spend the morning with 63 outstanding academic students. So the rest of my day included working on the editorial page, talking to a developer who wants to turn a vacant state psychiatric hospital into an athletic facility. I met with the editor who was putting out one of our weekly papers. We published profiles of the 63 outstanding academic achievers. I met with the reporter who is covering the trial of the man charged with shooting my five friends. There's a deadline Friday, and it's not clear what he's going to do in terms of changing his plea from not guilty to essentially an insanity plea. This is the life of a community journalist. Sometimes there's not time for a change in a tuxedo. We're still in temporary building. There's one bathroom for the men's, and it's always got somebody in it. So I did not think I would have time to change in a tuxedo, and I just bought one. We continue to do the work we have committed to do, not because we're courageous, but it's because it's the life we've chosen to lead. The names that need to be remembered are Rob Hyacin, Gerald Fishman, Wendy Winters, John McNamara, and Rebecca Smith. The Committee to Protect Journalists today published a work that included the last works of journalists who died. Gerald's work was in there. I'd urge you to read it. It was not his best editorial. It was
You know, the thing you say after a primary election where the results are kind of what you thought they were going to be. But it was the workman-like product of a professional editorial writer who spent his life trying to understand a community. That's what we do. This is a great honor. I really appreciate it. We'll continue to publish our paper. We'll continue to honor the memory of our friends, and I appreciate what you've done tonight. Thank you.
They did not die in vain. Also tonight, we pay tribute to the architects of the First Amendment Awards banquet. George Glazer was a reporter at WCAU-TV Philadelphia. He then became a prominent New York media relations executive. His clients included CBS News anchorman Walter Cronkite, 60 Minutes correspondent Mike Wallace, and executive producer Don Hewitt. 3 decades ago, George organized TV's top names to raise funds for the foundation. CBS's Cronkite, NBC's John Chancellor, ABC's Diane Sawyer, and Oprah Winfrey. George's wife, Mina, convinced Jane Fonda to join, along with her husband, Ted Turner. These were the original framers of the First Amendment Awards. Washington Mayflower Hotel, the inaugural First Amendment Awards banquet. Mr. Cronkite toasted George as America's most trusted PR man. Since then, the foundation has raised millions of dollars to fund journalism fellowships and to provide training to journalists. George unfortunately passed in November of 2016. Mina was laid to rest 1 day before last year's award ceremonies. Their son, Brian Glazer, is a former reporter that continues the tradition. He created the RTDNF George and Mina Glazer Fund. His goal is to raise capital for the foundation. Brian has been a contributor to CBS News. He also reported for CNN in Los Angeles. September 2001, that fateful day, New York City, Brian reported live on the World Trade Center attacks for CNN's 600 affiliates. News Source has now grown to 1,100 affiliates. Brian is now a news media relations executive. Among his clients, the National Parkinson Foundation and 3-time heavyweight boxing champion Muhammad Ali, one of history's most vocal proponents of the First Amendment. Since passing the world's greatest, Brian has joined the Muhammad Ali, his daughter, Kalia Ali. She's a former TV host in Philadelphia, Condé Nast magazine editor, and fashion designer. Glazer and Ali recently partnered on a news coverage project focusing on human rights violations in Africa's diamond mining regions. Tonight, we pay tribute to Kalia Ali for carrying on her father's legacy as a leader in the American civil rights and global human rights movements, and for the fight for the freedom of the speech, protected by the First Amendment. We invite Kalia Ali, the newest member of the Radio, Television, Digital News Foundation, and Brian Glazer, president and executive producer of World Satellite Television News, to stand and be recognized. Okay, we're going to take a short break and be back with more awards. While you enjoy your dinner, please join me in thanking tonight's sponsors. Diamond sponsors, CNN, Tegna. Platinum sponsors, ABC News, I like them. CBS News, Fox News Network. Hearst Television, the National Association of Broadcasters, NBC News, and MSNBC. Gold sponsors, CNN News Source, Nexstar Media Group. Silver sponsors, Charles Koch Institute, Cox Media Group, United Talent Agency, Shepard Smith Reporting, Wally Ryan LLP, and the signature cocktail sponsor, the the Associated Press. We'll be back in a minute.
Congress shall make no law
respecting an establishment of
religion or prohibiting the
free exercise thereof,
or abridging the
freedom of speech
or of the press,
or the right of the people peacefully to assemble.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
to petition the government
for a redress of grievances.
This is what democracy looks like.
the first for now, the first for the future, the first for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back your host, Chief Justice Correspondent for ABC News, Pierre Thomas.
Well, I'm going to let everyone find their seats. I must admit that filet mignon was not bad. I enjoyed it. But no napping allowed. We have more work to do and more celebration. Our next award this evening is the First Amendment Clarity Award. This award recognizes a journalist or group of journalists who go to extraordinary lengths to provide meaning and context to complicated news stories or issues of extreme public importance. Here to present the 2019 Clarity Award is NBC Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent and the host of Andrea Mitchell Reports on MSNBC, my friend, Andrea Mitchell.
Thank you, Pierre, and thank you for all you do for so many organizations, including the Reporters Committee, which you've led so beautifully. And thanks to all of you. It is such a special honor to be here in an organization that I have valued and spent so many years celebrating and enjoying and appreciating, but here to speak on behalf of all my colleagues at NBC News and MSNBC to present the RTDNF. You did change the name some years ago. First Amendment Clarity Award to a truly spectacular group of journalists whom we like to call our road warriors. Throughout the 2018 midterms, these 18 correspondents and reporters battled their way through the battleground states, covering local, state, and national races for NBC News, MSNBC, and NBC News Digital. At a time when our politics are more polarized than ever, and the media often under attack, this intrepid team traveled from one corner of the country to another, illuminating the issues of most concern to voters and bringing the stories of the American electorate to NBC and MSNBC. The great David Broder used to call it door knocking. It means not just going to rallies and not just talking to politicians. Through it all, they were directed and inspired by Daphne Linzer, managing editor for politics for NBC News and MSNBC, and by the incredible Rob Rivas, senior director for political coverage. So please turn to the screens to learn more about our road warriors.
When they hear the sound of the drum, they'll be saying, oh Lord, here they come.
We've got our road warriors all over the country on the campaign trail.
Come on, let's go.
Des Moines, Iowa.
Bridgeville, South Carolina, Tennessee.
Wisconsin.
I'm on the Mexican side of the border.
Here we come.
You had wheeled your oxygen tank out to vote, and you're wearing your Beto t-shirt.
How do you win as a Democrat in North Dakota?
So you want to check on the president.
Talk about what this means in terms of your political future here.
It could be historical for you.
Minnesota really could be one of the bellwethers tonight.
This is a part of Texas that is changing dramatically.
Is Reddit ready for midterms?
How many of you have been lifelong Republicans?
What are you expecting to see in there?
This district is a conservative bastion here in California.
Do you guys think that people in Washington kind of understand what life's like out here?
Oh, no, you kidding me?
Voters are saying they care more about health care. A lot of immigrants are here. Immigration is at the top of their list.
What did we not hear? Donald Trump, Democrats, or Omarosa?
At this point, it's still a very tense situation.
The crisis that is bursting at the seams.
Yeah, here we come. Hey, here we come. Hey, here we come. Here we come.
Now you know why, just a little bit of why we're so proud of them. So please, we want to welcome Casey Hunt and Jacob Soboroff to accept the award, along with some of their teammates, Mike Memoli, Morgan Radford, Ali Vitale, Chris Jansing, Shaquille Brewster, Mariana Atenzio, and Heidi Prisbilla. And I also want to salute Vaughn Hilliard and Garrett Hake. They would have been here, but right now they are en route to Iowa because Beto O'Rourke had some other plans. But we could not be more proud of this team for what they accomplished in 2018 and for how they are already diving headfirst into 2020. Casey, Jacob, all of you, come on up here. And this is not even the most important thing that Casey announced today, if you were watching Morning Joe.
She's expecting a baby road warrior. Give it up for Casey Hunt. Also, just real quick, give it up for Andrea Mitchell, the one and only, the legend, our mentor, all of our mentors. Thank you, Andrea. On behalf of all of us at NBC News and MSNBC, especially all of my fellow road warriors, hi Mariana, thank you to the RTDNF for this First Amendment Clarity Award tonight. We are extraordinarily grateful that you are acknowledging our work and to be here with all of our fellow honorees. This award in particular is about providing context and clarity to the news, and I want you guys to know that NBC News and MSNBC's dedication to depth and shift away from access-oriented boys-on-the-bus election coverage is no accident. It is years in the making, and it is why this particular group is standing here tonight. I want to give you guys a little backstory. In 2016, Andy Lack and Noah Oppenheim and Phil and Janelle and Daphne, and I am sure many, many others, decided to officially launch the NBC News Road Warriors. We were a team of 5 eager, maybe a little bit crazy journalists who spent our days traveling to every corner of the United States to report on what became the election of Donald Trump. Casey and I were in that first group with Hallie Jackson and Kristen Welker and Katie Tur, and what started with 5 of us has today evolved into 18 of us, what you see here and a whole lot more. As you can tell, Casey and I got held back and asked to do it again, which makes us super senior road warriors. But we would not trade it for the entire world. I really do think this is the best job in all of American politics and political reporting. All of us are united by one common goal, and that is to answer a very simple question: what matters? And literally for me this year I should say, that was my assignment. My boss, Betsy Corona, who is here in the house tonight, give it up for Betsy. She sat me down and she said, with the house on the line, why don't you and Arnie and Mitch, the incredible producers I work with, drive around as many toss-up districts as you can, spend a few days at a time, and ask people what matters to them. And I said to Betsy, that's it? That's all I'm going to do? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay. And that's what we did. That is literally how we decided to explore the issues that would actually decide who controls the House of Representatives. It turns out those issues were almost never the ones that we talk about on a daily basis on television, Mueller or Manafort or even the border, where I spent a lot of time this year. Nor is it a blind allegiance to Republicans or Democrats. Part of the reason in an election year with record turnout, tens of millions of people still stayed home. Americans are not shy about telling you that, and to them, their struggles are what is front and center. We heard all kinds of stories, like the connection I saw between shuttered paper mills and the opioid crisis in Maine, crumbling public transit on Staten Island, literally costing workers paychecks, the lack of jobs at the Texas border when in the Eagle Ford Shale to the north, things are booming. I traveled to countless cities, 7 toss-up districts, all but one of them flipped, and with them, the House. And because our job, all of our jobs, was to ask what matters, and with the backing of our network leaders, our team is able to go to the source and not rely on polls and we can say we truly understood why what went down. It is a privilege to get to do this job, to add the clarity and the context to our crazy daily news cycle, and for all of us as a team to be recognized simply for listening to people whose voices are too often not heard. And with that, I want to bring up my friend and my colleague, Casey.
Thank you again to the RTDNF for this incredible honor. And to echo Jacob, we would not be here tonight without the incredible support and real dedication of the NBC News leadership and what they showed to this project. Doing something like this takes an awful lot of resources, and whenever we needed them, they were there for us. So we really, really appreciate that. And I am also so honored to have been placed in such good company with colleagues who are being honored by this award, people that I have been very privileged to learn from. Andrea, thank you. Chris Jansing, who was incredibly gracious to me when I first started in television, as well as to be inspired by the hardworking, young, up-and-coming journalists who are putting in their first miles on the campaign trail. It's incredibly fun to watch just how much you have grown as you have all done this. I also want to say a special thank you to all of the producers who backed us up, who are not up here on stage tonight, because we would not have been able to do any of this without them. And to Rob Rivas and Christopher Nelson on the politics desk. Couldn't have done it without you either. A personal thank you from me to Alex Moe, who traveled on the trail with me. We're here tonight honoring the First Amendment when, and a theme tonight has been that is just under incredible threat. And when I think back to why it was I wanted to be a journalist in the first place when I was a kid, it seemed like this noble profession, right? A civic duty, a noble way to spend your life. But it's lately taken on this more sort of urgent tone. And, I wonder what the 16-year-olds of today are thinking when they see their president call journalists the enemy of the people and when they're literally under attack. And I know we're all thinking of the journalists at the Capitol newspaper that have also been honored here this evening. I hope that those kids are still going to look forward and choose this as a profession that they think is something that's worthy and honorable, despite all of the rhetoric. For me, it's always been about trying to figure out who are the people that want to lead us. Are they honest? Are they worthy of the public trust? And to try to give people tools that they need to make the right decisions about what to do with their votes, which is, very precious to them. And, Jacob talked a lot about talking to the voters. I do also think, we got a chance to be out there with the candidates. When I cover Congress every day, watching what they do there can very often be explained by going home with them to their districts and taking a look at the pressures that they face. And, being able to watch presidential candidates under stress, see how they run from tough questions, or if they answer them, that's what we're really able to do by being out there day in and day out. And yes, Senator Klobuchar, we are coming for you. Jacob, of course, eloquently described, why meeting voters is important. I also think it's a chance for us to give people a sense of who we are as journalists and to make up their own minds instead of just listening to the rhetoric that we hear. So hopefully all of us have given some Americans at least a chance to do that. I know so many of you out in this room tonight have done that as well, and I think that is incredibly important in the face of this vitriolic rhetoric, because really it evaporates when you get a chance to have a face-to-face conversation with a real person. So my hope is that our work will continue to speak for itself and that our countrymen and women will continue to uphold the values that we are celebrating here tonight. So thank you very much for this honor.
Again, congratulations. Wow, that was a lot of NBC News I was standing beside it. Okay. All right. The First Amendment Service Award honors professionals in local or network news who work in off-air management, largely behind the scenes, to protect and defend freedom of the press. I'm very excited about this award. This year's honoree has proven himself to be a tireless advocate. And here to present this award, please welcome ABC News Chief Global Affairs Correspondent, Martha Raddatz, my friend.
It's great to be here with all of you. You know, I could read the impressive resume James brings to our news division. I could list his awards. What I really want to tell you is how much we at ABC News genuinely like James. His love of his 3 boys and his amazing wife, Laura, his love of this country, having become a citizen just 2 years ago. We love his work ethic, his absolute passion for good storytelling, his wry sense of humor. Yes, we love his accent too. And his raised eyebrow, which usually means you had better keep working on whatever story pitch you just hurled at him, because in the end, that is part of his constant effort to make us all better journalists. At the core of James is his fierce and unrelenting defense of the First Amendment, as he has said, against all comers, and the responsibility we bear to make sure our news coverage is straightforward, accurate, and right down the line. I asked a few of our young folks at ABC what they have learned about news and the First Amendment while working at ABC, because it says a lot about who we are and who James is as a leader. Matt Saylor, a digital journalist at ABC News and former Marine Corps infantryman, said, "Freedom of speech does not merely protect the speaker's right to say what they want, but the right of the rest of us to hear it. That last part is often conspicuously missing when censorship is proposed to silence someone. We simply can't have civilization without it." And James makes sure we know that every day. Freda Kahan-Kashi, a producer for This Week, said, "I think the First Amendment is something that we often take for granted, but not at ABC. Critical thinking is encouraged. We are lucky at ABC to openly share differing, sometimes very strong opinions, but know in the end it is our job to take out opinion and tell the story straight down the middle. Having that balance is something that's encouraged throughout the news division, and I think that makes us stronger." And finally, Erica King, age 25, a production assistant, says, "James Golston has played a significant role in orchestrating a team of journalists who exemplify exactly what freedom of speech means, and I am so grateful to be part of this wonderful ABC News team. As you will see in this video, we all are."
There's a great tradition here at ABC News about being straightforward. And James Golston, by the way, is very straightforward. He is so creative in his thinking. I mean, at the bedrock is always about good journalism, good storytelling.
It's not lost on me that as I come up those stairs and walk down that hallway to get to this desk, that Peter sat here and Charlie did and Diane did. And it's a reminder of the privilege and really, quite frankly, the responsibility that comes with this job. But there's something else that folks at home don't get to see, and that is James, our leader, who's in that control room, which you can't see. It's up above this video wall here. But every single night as I say, good evening to the country, James is right there.
Maybe it's because he's a new American citizen. Maybe it's because he's just discovered apple pie. I don't know. But I do know that he believes in this country and he believes in what we do at a level that reaches purpose.
I think all of us understand that we're at a real crucial moment right now for our country and for our professions. And I think James has really captured that in the mission statement he set out for ABC News. Straightforward, fact-based journalism, not afraid to challenge anyone or anything or any set of ideas.
Every day at ABC News, we are profoundly aware of the importance of the First Amendment, especially now. There isn't a day that goes by that I am not reminded of what James wants us to do and the responsibility we bear.
I think that's one of his greatest gifts to the news division, is that we're all unmistakable about where he stands, and it's up to us to live up to his expectations.
You might remember that the president had some choice words for me when we were here at the White House.
She's shocked that I picked her.
No.
She's like in a state of shock.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
One of the first calls that I got right after it was over was from James, and his message to me was to not back down, just keep doing the job.
We live in an age where a lot of opinions are packaged as facts, as news. That's not how we roll at ABC News. And that starts with the leadership of James Goldston, old school. He's about substance.
There's a fearlessness that James has, not a recklessness, but a fearlessness in pursuit of stories that matter.
I work for a company under the leadership of James Goldston, who charges its journalists to find the truth, to open people's minds, to open people's hearts.
James has given us a platform. He's given us the space to chase our curiosity, to chase the stories wherever they take us.
We've just wrapped an interview with Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, and we were able to press him. And because of decisions made by James, we were able to come here and ask questions reporters in this country could not ask.
I think of the look on his face after every big special report, whether it's the Kavanaugh hearings or Michael Cohen. I think of him in the interview room for those 6 hours we spent with James Comey and just being riveted.
From a personal perspective, here's the most important thing about James. When I go into a White House briefing, when I go into the Oval Office and fire questions out at the president, it can get hot, it can get intense. And the key thing is that I know that James Goldston's got my back.
You know, when I think of some of the biggest moments, you recognize that James has been there every step of the way. The first interview with President Trump in the White House, that moment, that town hall with President Obama on policing and race in our country, the historic moment with Pope Francis in the Vatican. In all of those moments, James is not only our leader, but he's present, he's there.
He's always pushing us to look at a story differently. He's bold, and he makes you bold. That's James.
Well, information is light. I believe that Tom Stoppard said it in a play, but it's absolutely true that it is the thing that illuminates the path forward. And I always think one of the most interesting things that James does in the regular morning meeting is over and over again, he'll say, anything else? And people who don't work at ABC News might think that just means anything else, but no. It means anything else, as in, is there a fact that could change our view of the situation? Is there a story you have seen that could turn us in a different direction? Because information is light.
And let me introduce James Goldston.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to the RTDNF. Thank you to the brilliant Martha Raddatz, as always. Thank you, Martha. We are fortunate to have her, and to Pierre, and to the great men and women of ABC News. I can't tell you what a privilege and a joy it is to work. The people you saw in that video, the people that are here tonight from ABC News, amazing team of people with a passion and commitment for their work that just shows through in every single thing that they do, and every call that they make, and every piece that we see across all of our platforms every single day. So I've had a long relationship with the First Amendment. It's about a century now. So my grandfather came to America, came during the Great Depression. He left Southampton on the RMS Aquitania, coming to New York. He had no money, not a penny to his name, and he rode on the trains with the Okies. He rode all the way across America looking for work, rode all the way to San Francisco, ended up picking oranges in an orange grove in Los Gatos near San Francisco. And he came back to England, kind of wide-eyed, with tales of this great country and its spirit. And those stories have always, he would tell them to me as a child, those stories have always stuck with me. I grew up with a fascination with America and a profound appreciation for its values. and a hunger to follow in his footsteps. And so 15 years ago, thanks to ABC News, I got the chance to do that. So me, my wife Laura, who's here tonight, we had 2 kids then, got 3 kids now. So we wanted to follow in my grandfather's footsteps. So we got on the boat too. We got on the boat, same place in Southampton, rowed the boat over, got up at dawn as we came into New York Harbor to salute the Statue of Liberty, the great symbol of freedom, as we came into New York. And, you know, I think it's a profound thing when you arrive in a country as a journalist, and you arrive in a country where you know that the Constitution itself protects our freedom to be journalists. It's a profound privilege, and I give thanks for it every single day. And a fellow immigrant, Canadian, called Peter Jennings, he felt exactly the same way, came for the same reasons, and that's why he carried a pocket-sized copy of the Constitution in his back pocket everywhere he went, on all those trips he did, all those years. So fast forward 15 years to this moment, an interesting moment. I have to say, you know, came a little wide-eyed to this country. It's painful to me to hear journalism and, most important, democratic freedom called out as fake news, and to witness what feels like the pervasive and sometimes the deliberate destruction of our national discourse. And make no mistake, we are not the problem. That is my phone ringing. I think that's one of my children asking me how it went. I will tell them. I will tell them shortly. That's quite thrown me off. Make no mistake, we are not the problem here. But the threat we face as journalists in this moment is very, very real. We're under sustained attack, and you feel it every single day, from bad actors who are mounting an assault on the truth and an assault on our work every single day. And when you look at the numbers, you know, the numbers have to be troubling to all of us in this room. 64% of Americans say that false reporting has caused a great deal of confusion about the basic facts of current issues and events. On social media, a fake news story, a false story, 70% more likely to be shared than a story that's true. 69% of American adults say their trust in the news media has decreased over the past decade. And that erosion of trust in media is undermining an industry that we cherish, and it's dividing us as Americans. And clearly we have a lot of work to do to protect our integrity and protect our fundamental freedoms and never, ever take them for granted. Last week, a journalist who works for ABC News, amongst others, Cody Weddle, was arrested in Caracas, in a country that cracks down on straightforward reporting and that doesn't enshrine our rights. He was accused of treason and espionage. He was hooded and interrogated by Venezuelan counterintelligence agents for 12 hours. They raided his apartment, they went through his phone, and they demanded to know the names of his sources and his colleagues. Cody was harassed and detained for nothing more than telling the world what he sees happening in a country gripped by a political and humanitarian crisis. And he's far from the only one. This year, 36 journalists have been arrested in Venezuela. Some of them are still in custody. And we stand with all of them. And of course, we won't be deterred. And tonight, we're back in Caracas with a team, right now, reporting on that story again. And this moment, I feel like it calls for us to be better at what we do than we've ever been before. It is our duty to bolster the real news and to discredit the news that you can't trust. We have to be straightforward in doing that. We've got to dig deep, get it right, don't take sides, own our mistakes when we make them. And when we do that, I'm optimistic that good journalism will prevail over bad. And indeed, we're seeing like amazing examples, inspiring examples of that this evening. And I believe that with thoughtfulness and care and nurturing, this can truly be a new era of journalistic greatness. And I'm counting on it. And you've heard it, you know, I'm a young American, 2 years old. My family and I, we became American citizens 2 years ago, and we proudly took an oath to uphold the Constitution. And, you know, it's something that we feel every single day. And I know my wife feels the same way. She's a journalist too, works as a reporter and an anchor for the BBC. And it's something that we're trying to instill in our children too. You know, that these are profound values. And all of us in this room, I know, are doing everything that we can in support of the First Amendment. And so I'm proud to receive this award on behalf of all of us at ABC News. And thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege here as your MC. We greatly admire and respect our leader, James Goldston. And as a sign of that, I'd like his colleagues from both ABC News and Disney to stand up. It'll show you how we feel about him. Please stand up. All right, moving right along here. RTDNF presents the Leonard Seidenberg First Amendment Award annually to a radio or television journalist or news executive who's made a major contribution to the protection of First Amendment freedoms. Its namesake is the late broadcasting and cable senior correspondent, Leonard Seidenberg. Here to present tonight's award is the executive producer of Shepard Smith Reporting, Jonathan Glenn.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to keep this brief because, like most producers, I'm a lot more comfortable behind the scenes. Thanks again for asking me to do this, Shep, up here in front of everybody. It's not like you had Chris Wallace sitting right there. I've known you, Shep, probably about 20 years now, and we've worked together for the last dozen or so. And I don't know if you know, but I had to be talked into coming to work for you. The president of Fox News, Jay Wallace, who's right over there, repeatedly, he was then running Shepard's show, and he repeatedly tried to talk me into coming to work for Shep, and I repeatedly said absolutely not, because I'd heard he was tough to work for. After a few years, I gave in, and you know what? It actually turned out that I was totally right. He was really tough to work for. But really only with those who didn't care. Look, if you cared about being right and you wanted to be good at your job, everything was great. Because Shep really cared. And he was so good at his job. Frustratingly so, to be honest. Like, I was a pretty good writer. He was a better writer, a better producer. He knew lighting and had a white balance and set levels. And I have not met another person on this planet who is more attuned to a misplaced modifier. To be honest, kind of exasperating, but also really rewarding. Because I realized very quickly that what Shep cares about most is the truth and about facts and about telling stories to people as he would if he were in their living room. Shep cares tremendously about this business, and he takes very seriously what we all do. And he tries to do a serious service. Every day he tries to explain the facts during a news cycle that speeds past. I mean, seriously, when we started out, we were ripping wires off the printer, and now we're trying to monitor the 7 columns of TweetDeck and the 17 videos that just posted to Storyful and the alerts on Dataminer and Banjo that follow us to our homes and to dinner and on vacation. But when news is breaking, or tragedy is unfolding, there's nobody that I trust more to take us through it, to explain the facts, explain, sometimes more importantly, what we don't yet know, and try to make sense of madness. And on the very rare occasions that a script is not perfect, almost never happens, or it needs more clarity, Shepard fills in the missing pieces on the fly, caring only about getting it right, and not, for instance, if maybe his producer might want to eventually hit a commercial break. This can be a rough line of work, but it carries an amazing responsibility, and for years, Shepard has shown himself up to the challenge.
Our profession is enshrined in the Constitution, and the Fourth Estate holds the essential job of being your eyes and often ears, and when appropriate, your voice. It's a cornerstone of our republic.
The western side of the eye of Hurricane Katrina wiped out this entire neighborhood. So many did not make it. This man is one of those.
You know where to go or what to do?
Not really.
Has anyone told you anything?
We've been on this bridge for 3 days.
They're going to get her to a doctor, and the doctor's going to help her. The main thing that's being urged everywhere you go is calm, that this is a time to remain calm. We are hit with a national crisis unprecedented. And the word from people on the street, from the mayor of New York City and others is, it's time to put your arms around a neighbor, take a deep breath, and try to get through this. September the 11th, 1 year later, live from Ground Zero. Here, that we learned, or where we were reminded, that it's the American spirit which endures. Live in Dallas.
More updates from here across Japan. And good evening from Kiev.
Above 4 Oklahoma.
Live from Baghdad, along the Israeli-Lebanon border. Minister of the Columbine Unitarian Church. Where do you start with people who have been through such a tragedy? Our local station is now reporting that the second suspect in the Boston Marathon bombing is now down. There are police and SWAT vehicles, as you can see, streaming in that direction. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Broward County, Florida, in the town of Parkland, where many students and teachers and administrators have died today. The truth of the matter is, what's happened here is the Russian troops have come in. They've, in essence, taken the place over and told the Ukrainians to surrender their weapons. Over 22 years at this network, it has been my experience that the journalists of Fox News and Fox Business, and those of our colleagues at competitors at CNN and MSNBC, NBC, ABC, and CBS, Bloomberg and PBS, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of them operate in the public interest. There's word that police have actually found it. They found evidence that somebody did indeed kill the Washington Post contributor inside the Saudi consulate. These are live pictures at the Capitol Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, reports of an active shooter. Matthew Van Dyke, who's a filmmaker, friend of both Stephen Sotloff and Jim Foley. Man, I am so sorry.
They were just journalists doing their jobs, reporting. They had a passion for what they did. They knew the risks, but they kept going back because the story needed to be told.
Terrorists armed with high-powered rifles are still on the loose, according to authorities, after they opened fire at the office of a satirical newspaper and killed a dozen people. It was a strike on freedom of expression and journalism itself. Live from Ground Zero, Osama bin Laden shot in the face, dead and buried at sea. Good Sunday morning from Baghdad on Election Day, the first free democratic elections in 50 years. There are some Katyusha rockets landing just behind the camera.
This is the beginning of the ground invasion, the first of the Israeli troops moving across the Lebanon border.
Nearly 11 hours ago, I was a witness as Timothy McVeigh took his last breath. Somewhere around 100 people have been killed inside the concert hall. Fox News continuing coverage of the deadly Bastille Day attack on a packed promenade in southern France. We realize that there's a lot of recovery to be done here, but I can't stress how impressive it is what they've already gotten accomplished. The troubled Fukushima nuclear plant to our north now said to be releasing dangerous radioactive material directly into the atmosphere here. First from Fox this evening, rescue crews are now conducting a desperate search in the waters off Louisiana. We work to discern what is truth, then to present it to you in context and with perspective. And as your representatives in the people's halls, report to you without fear or favor, while striving to hold those in power to the same standards. This is the foundation of what we do. It's our reason for being, our purpose.
That was well said. That's Shep the journalist. I want you to know really, really quickly, there's also Shep the friend, because he's the guy you call at midnight when you're having a family emergency or your super locked you out and the buzzer isn't working. If anybody needs his cell phone, it's all yours. You can call him at midnight too. Shep, I respect you. I appreciate you. I'm proud to call you a colleague and a mentor and an amazing friend, even though sometimes you're still a little tough to work with. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2019 RTDNF Leonard Zeidenberg First Amendment Award recipient, my friend Shepard Smith.
Difficult. We'll have a meeting later. John Glenn is one of the greatest writers I've ever known. In our teaching hospital, he's a mentor and a leader and just an amazing guy, and I never want to do this without you. Thank you so much for that. I hadn't seen that video either. God, that's a long time ago. I was so very young and had all that hair. God, that was great. There's so many people here who've really helped me kind of along the way. Kim Rosenberg, who 23 years ago when our little channel came on the air was a floor director and stage manager, switched over to editorial and then was a writer for me, my line producer, my senior producer, my executive producer, and is now the senior vice president of news editorial for the company, and I'm very proud of her. There are actually two of those. The other one is Alan Komisaroff, who's in New York working, and he was my writer, and then line producer, and then senior producer, and is now the other senior vice president of news editorial. And then there's Jay Wallace, who was a tape runner on the overnight shift and a desk assistant, and then was my line producer and senior producer and executive producer, and is now the executive editor and president of the network. So all roads kind of lead through this, for better or worse. I mean, this on the news side, this is all you get. You know, the numbers are slim, but there they are. Thank you for enduring. They're the ones who make every day really, really fun and rewarding, even when we're going through all of those dick tweeting things or whatever that was. Thanks to my friends and colleagues who've taken the time to be here tonight. Many of them have come down from New York. My brother Benton, who's come from Oxford, home of the honored institution of higher learning, the one in Mississippi where they don't speak with an accent, which is nice. I'm glad he's here. My partner Gio, who makes every day outside of work worth living. And my brother, by the way, has to catch a morning flight very early in the morning because he and the kids have to go on a spring break trip in the morning. And if the travel gods don't smile on him, I'm the dead uncle. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time, but I do want to tell you how humbled and thankful I am for this award. The same award accepted by Brinkley and Chancellor and Amanpour and Eiffel and Diane Sawyer and Mike Wallace, whose son Chris is here tonight, and I thank you. And of course, Walter Cronkite. In my den in Mississippi when I was a child, I would sit there with my dad. Hi, Dad. He's 91. He's sitting at home with Pitty Pat watching on the computer if they can make it work tonight. And I hope you did. Thank you for everything, and I'm sorry about childhood. Really, I was a child. By the way, they used to argue sometimes. Maybe it's not arguing. Maybe they would have adult discussions among children. And they would have them about the Vietnam War. And I used to say, if we could stop this arguing, and if I could just get over there and tell them about it, if I could go learn about it, then I could come and tell my parents, no, Mom, it's like this. No, Dad, it's like this. I know, I just saw it. But I was like 7, so that didn't really work out. But it really was sort of the beginning of this curiosity about wanting to be there when things happen. And I couldn't at that moment. And since then, I've been able to do that thanks to this amazing job. This award I share with my team here and back in New York, who produced and edited and copy edited and checked again, as we do every single day, our newscast, like I'm sure all of you do. But I want to share this award with them because they really are the backbone of what we do, because they work so hard to get everything exactly right. Because as you may know, people kind of pay a little bit of attention to what happens over here in our corner. And it's very important to get it exactly right. Being accurate and honest and thorough and fair is our primary mission. It's our professional calling, and everyone on my team takes it extremely seriously. This award is named for the late Leonard Zeitenberg. When he died in 1990, the FCC chair then, Alfred Sykes, said of him, "Len was a model journalist. He was curious, relentless, and fairly reflected the facts as he understood them." This is an ideal we all try to live up to. We know our jobs come with an intrinsic duty and responsibility to others, to the people who trust us. And as the late Dr. Jim Pratt told me in the halls of Farley Hall at Ole Miss back in the day in journalism school, we must seek the truth. We must find the truth, and when we know the truth, we must tell the truth, fully and completely, as clearly and succinctly as humanly possible, always, unmoved from the influence of those who wish that the truth reflected more favorably on them or their actions. And when the inevitable mistake happens, we must immediately correct it and sincerely apologize for it. I personally believe this is the duty not only of journalists, but of every person who has the honor of a platform of influence. We must never manipulate or invent. We must never knowingly deceive, because to do so is a disservice to our audience and potentially injurious to our society. And I'm convinced that upon those who intentionally inform or misinform, history will poorly reflect. The times ahead will test all of us as finders and disseminators of accurate information. My team and I, like you and yours, will strive to remain on task, trying our very best to ignore the Twitter trolls and others who relentlessly pursue us daily, and to get the facts to the people, all of the people, in every place, in every corner where information is taken in. The First Amendment that this award honors gives us the protection to do what's right no matter what. To the Founding Fathers, we're grateful and mindful of our responsibility, of our purpose, and of our duty. So kudos to all of you for your tireless efforts. My team and I admire and salute you, and journalists everywhere, and I humbly thank you for this award. Good night, and get it right. Thank you. I love bowls.
The RTDNF presents the First Amendment Leadership Award annually to a business or government leader or other individual who has made a significant contribution to the protection of the First Amendment and the freedom of the press. I'd like to invite Dan Shelley back to the stage to introduce a very special guest to present this award.
Thank you. Isn't Pierre doing a great job? And don't worry, we only have 7 more awards to go. Seriously, I am honored tonight to begin the process of introducing our First Amendment Leadership Award winner. It's special to me on 2 counts. Number 1, because of the recipient, who is a friend of mine, and the trustees decided to grant him this award anyway. Because of the work he has done every single day to show how outstanding responsible journalism can have a direct positive impact on the public his reporting serves. And second, because of that recipient's presenter. It is now my honor to introduce the first woman to lead the CBS Network News Division, and the 2003 recipient of the RTDNF First Amendment Service Award, Z, Susan Zirinsky.
Obviously not a mic for small people. I am here tonight to celebrate someone very important at CBS. R. Kelly. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Sorry, David. David Begnaud. There are a lot of people in this room that I have grown up with, and I mean really grown up with. Chris Wallace, remember many of those campaign planes? And we put stuff on your seat and you'd get really pissed off. A chocolate cake once. Kennedy campaign, 1980. We are in unbelievable times. And I think there isn't anyone in this room that doesn't understand the importance of the times we're living in and our responsibility of speaking truth to power. At CBS, we are about the vision that is based on the great legacy of CBS News. Great storytelling, journalism that has impact, and at CBS, we're idealists. We have a vocation. It's a calling, and it's about deep public service. David Begnaud understands that. He also understands the changing platforms. The tech may change, but the mission doesn't. David is about how we can marry our rich journalistic legacy with a totally modern approach. Begnaud is like the stories he covers. He's a force of nature. Really a force of nature. He understands the power to expose what's really happening. David's parents are here tonight. I have a question for you guys. Did you actually at birth give him those waders, you know, the kind that you wear in the hurricanes or flood? Because it's a little amazing that there isn't a disaster, flood, hurricane, or alligator-filled swamp that he won't go. Seriously, David's core value, and he's young, but he has a long way to go, but it really is the thing that fuels my soul to give a voice to the unheard. And he feels that every story he goes to. It takes him wherever it leads him, no matter how uncomfortable the situation. Begnaud spent more than a month in Puerto Rico. He was on the ground before, during, and after Hurricane Maria hit. He saw in front of his own eyes the desperation of people. He spent day after day telling their stories of loss, their need of food and water and shelter. He shared the uplifting stories of survival and those that were struggling to help them. The world saw the pain. The world saw the heroes. David became a crucial lifeline of information about how those in Puerto Rico were doing. And he kept doing it, and he kept doing it, as they struggled to get back to any kind of normal life. It wasn't happening. They weren't getting the help they needed. David gave them a voice. Begnaud understands what it means to socialize a story, even if it's in the front of a car, a back of a car. And I won't go into some of the places you have put on social media. We'll talk about that later. Putting things on social platforms and every platform imaginable, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, sharing the stories where people are consuming their news today is really important. Our own digital network, CBSN, became a tremendous outlet for his work. On the broadcast network, people were stunned to see the reality of what was happening and actually what wasn't happening. David, you relentlessly uphold the First Amendment by pushing the free flow of factual information, no matter how uncomfortable it may make some people feel. Let's take a look at David's remarkable reporting.
Freedom of the press, hallelujah. We're in favor here at CBS. And you know, it's needed now more than ever before. That's why I am so glad that David Begnaud is on our team. Yep, he's with us.
Puerto Rico's governor is telling people to stay calm, but he's warning that the island is on the verge of losing communication.
You're all familiar with the work that he did in Puerto Rico. They call him the patron saint of Puerto Rico. There's a reason for that.
There are probably, I'd estimate, about 1,000 people in this terminal waiting to get a flight.
We watched as most of the country did in the days and weeks following Hurricane Maria. And we saw one of our own, David Begnaud of CBS News, sending back images and the stories of devastation.
At 8 a.m. Friday morning, young children started lining up with their parents to get food. Everyone was given a bag with 4 bottles of water and 3 snacks that the mayor says may have to last them 2 days.
For so many people in Puerto Rico, he was their sole means of communication. And for people outside of Puerto Rico, his reports unearthed the lack of resources and the suffering.
Do you need more help?
Of course I do.
We lost everything.
You don't have anything at home?
Where's the army?
The story in Puerto Rico mushroomed. We began to realize that this wasn't a place that was easy to get supplies in.
David truly persevered by simply using his cell phone.
Joana, mi amor, el Señor te bendiga.
In what was instinctually in his heart to do.
He gives a voice to the voiceless. We are all better off because of that.
How much money have you gotten from FEMA?
And he's still breaking news, still reporting on the island. He's never let that story go. It's very reminiscent of Edward R. Murrow's See It Now.
This is where Hurricane Maria made landfall 6 months ago, Jabucoa, on the southeastern part of the island. These days, you'll get a pretty good cell phone signal. Water's running, but people here haven't had electricity since September.
David represents what all of us at CBS News are committed to: good journalism, getting to the truth, and shedding light on the stories that need to be told.
For those of us who couldn't get a hold of our families and didn't really know what was going on, yours was the source of information that we relied on a daily basis.
At this point, I'm probably getting 30 messages a minute from people who are saying, could you please tell me about this town? Could you please go check on my grandmother? She lives here. People are sending me pictures. They're sending me addresses. What do you say to the people who are watching this, who haven't been here?
I've been telling them through Facebook, please send the financial help to your families. Just don't come here. It's just nearly impossible.
If you come here, you're going to have a hard time getting in, and you're going to have a hell of a hard time getting out. Hi, everyone. We were on our way to Wataka when we saw people standing on the side of the road, and they're standing here because there's a cell phone tower that everyone is trying to get some kind of signal to make a call, like this family right here who actually just got a call through. This is Ellie Rivera. She has damage to her home, but she's trying to call her kids to let them know that she's okay. It's hot here. There's no water, there's no power, but where there is some kind of cell phone signal, people are desperately just holding their phone up to the sky to try and get some kind of connection.
Your empathy to Puerto Rico and its challenges after Hurricane Maria helped to make the rest of the world aware of the pain and suffering we were going through during those days.
An Orlando resident sent this post just days after Hurricane Maria, and it summed up the feelings and gratitude many of our viewers shared. Carlos wrote, he deserves recognition, and with no doubt, it is safe to say that we, the people of Puerto Rico, owe him. Thank you for all you do, David Begnaud. Thank you for caring about Puerto Rico as much as we do. God bless your heart and keep up the great job. You have been amazing.
Help me. It's like the walls are caving in.
We hear it's bad, but we can't even get to some of the worst areas.
But I just can't. It isn't in my blood.
It's total annihilation, devastation, no power anywhere in Puerto Rico.
Because of your reporting, I ordered food to be delivered to the airports.
I hear you, but it's not getting to them.
Thank you for always saying presente for Puerto Rico and for continuing to tell our stories more than a year after Hurricane Maria. You're honorary Puerto Rican. You always get invited to the cookout. You will always get the best piece of pernil. We're so proud of you.
I've seen you in many situations where hardships needed reporting, and always you were there in the more difficult places. And you reported with integrity, with pragmatism, and you became the voice of the voiceless. For that, you deserve this award. For that, I'm so proud to call you friend. Congratulations.
Congratulations on your well-deserved award.
Congratulations, David Begnaud.
Muchas felicitaciones, mucha salud y mucho éxito. Pa'lante, David.
Congratulations from all of us at CBS News.
Congratulations to you, David Begnaud. There's nobody like you. You are one of a kind in the best of ways.
It has been our experience that Puerto Ricans are some of the most resilient Americans we've ever met. After the storm, there was a rush to get things done in order to save lives. But now that rush has shifted to getting those things done before the next hurricane season begins on June 1st. For CBS This Morning, I'm David Begnaud in Yabucoa, Puerto Rico.
Please welcome to the stage this year's RTDNF First Amendment Leadership Award honoree and my friend, David Begnaud.
Video reminded me of what it was like to be on the island and to listen to those people's story. It reminds me that I always have been, as a kid growing up in South Louisiana, I've always gravitated to the folks in the back and in the corner who seemingly didn't have a friend or didn't have somebody to sit with. And I think what I found in Puerto Rico was a group of people who desperately wanted to be acknowledged and wanted to be heard. And what I remembered as I watched that video was the first night sitting in the hotel room right after we had finished the CBS Evening News. And I remember thinking there has to be more to this that doesn't just end with the broadcast. What else can we do? And I remember picking up my phone and just talking to it, which seemingly sounds like something we do, but it just took on a different meaning in the most viscerally, painfully, authentically sobering way. I've always been told, don't cross that line. We have that line in journalism. And I don't cross it, but I may damn well teeter right on it. And I think what I learned in Puerto Rico is that when you're following what the heart says to do, if you happen to tiptoe on the line or step over it, the boss won't call you and yell at you if the heart led the way. Speaking of the boss, Z, I don't know if I've worked in a newsroom, and I mean this, and you know that, where people have been more united and excited by someone. I am so excited to work at CBS News with you at the helm. Kim Godwin, the Executive Vice President of CBS News. I can't believe I got this many bosses in a room and I'm not even in trouble. Kim Godwin, you're the reasonable one who, when I walk in and say, boss, I got something, you kind of look at me and you go, yeah, you said that was the last one you had. That was the last important one. But you've always been reasonable and fair, and I thank you for that. Nancy Cordes, our Chief Congressional Correspondent, thank you for being here. My friend Chris Van Cleve, thank you. Krista Robinson, our Senior Vice President of Communications. How many times you called me in Puerto Rico and said they want an interview, but what do you have to do first? Because the job is what we're there for, and I never lost sight of that. Terry Stewart, the Vice President and National Editor, you were the first to believe in me when I was a kid knocking at the door asking for an opportunity. And I will never forget that. Sean Herbert, my producer on all things Puerto Rico, you actually went to Puerto Rico with somebody else, and we got paired up after that, and we've been a team ever since. You make me better. You're a mentor. You're a friend. You are a guidance counselor, and I thank you. my partner, Jeremy, who lives in Los Angeles. I'll never forget when I said I'm moving to New York to pursue a dream because, by the way, I always wanted to do what I'm doing today. In fact, when someone says to me, what else do you want to do? I think for a moment and I look back at them and I say, I don't know, because I'm doing what I always dreamed of doing. Jeremy said to me, I will stay here, I will support you. That was 3 years ago, and I was a Miami correspondent, then a Dallas correspondent, and he's still with me, God love him. Thank you for being here tonight. My mentor, Josette Surratt, was my freshman English teacher, was my high school speech and debate coach, is my mentor and my dearest friend. She is here tonight. And I am so grateful. To my parents, who I'm blessed to have healthy and able to be here to support me. Glenn and Sid Begnaud, they would be okay if I did anything but this, but they're just as happy. My father said, son, as long as you're moral and ethical, do whatever you want to do. Listen, I want to end by telling you this. After Puerto Rico, a couple of things happened in my life that I didn't expect. It was Pride weekend. I was flying and I was about to touch down in McAllen, Texas. And I sent out a tweet that said something to the effect of reporting the truth includes sharing my own. And I didn't feel like I needed to say much more than that. But for a kid growing up in South Louisiana who was gay and had a dream of doing what he does today, I wasn't sure I could do it. I wasn't sure I could stand in front of the faces of the people who I have so much respect for in this room today and be open about who I am. The reality is the people of Puerto Rico, in their gratitude and support of me, I think caused me to be more authentic as a human being than I had ever been before. And I think that's the irony here. My hope for all of you is that you too one day have a chance to either walk that line or step over it. Because again, if the heart is leading the way, I don't know you'll ever do anything wrong. Thank you for this honor. I am so humbled.
And now, to present the RTDNF's 2019 Lifetime Achievement Award, please welcome the presiding judge of the 14th Judicial Court of Texas, the Honorable Eric V. Moyer.
Good evening. It is an honor to present to you, to introduce to most of you, your Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Dale Hansen. The one word which best describes Dale Hansen is fearless. It's not the fearlessness that comes from having been hired after he'd been fired no less than 8 times. It's not even the fearlessness that comes from an unheard of tenure of 35 years at the same station, watching scores of managers and bosses come and go. It's the fearlessness shared by many in this room, best informed by the wisdom of the book of Matthew, which says in chapter 10, verse 26, "Fear not, for there is nothing hidden which will not be revealed." Dale Hansen's career has been fearless. How fearless is he, you ask? I'm glad. Dale actually wrestled a bear 2 times. He's more known for the legendary fight on a Sunday night, trading punches, actually receiving punches, from former Dallas Cowboys head coach Barry Switzer on Dale's live television show. Switzer had been giving his typical non-responsive answers. Dale called him on it, and the fists started flying. The commentator Alexis de Tocqueville once said, "I love a free press, not for the good it does, but for the hypocrisy that it reveals." Dale Hansen is fearless in his craft. There used to be a line many of you know that when it's important, America turns to CBS. Actually, that really does typify Dale in Texas. Whenever there is a sports story in North Texas, whether it is a Super Bowl victory, although very few people can remember that happening in Dallas, whether it is the loss of an icon like Tom Landry, whether it is exposing the corruption of a major university in scandal, when it's important in sports in Texas, America, North Texas turns to Dale Hansen. But it's not his journalistic chops that earned him this award tonight. It's the commentaries that are viewed from Texarkana to Tel Aviv. Dale first exposed and revealed his fearlessness after the Penn State sex abuse scandal, when people were suggesting that individuals who'd been abused couldn't possibly keep it quiet for decades. Dale had the answer, the staggeringly fearless answer. He said, "If you think you don't know someone who is the victim of abuse, you're wrong, because you all know me." No time have I ever seen that kind of courage from an individual. Dale Hansen called out the Dallas Cowboys for their refusal to bring Michael Sam, noting the hypocrisy of a locker room that could accommodate drug dealers, wife beaters, accused murderers, but somehow couldn't get past a man who loved whom he chose. In Dallas, exposing that hypocrisy was fearless. We're going to see a bit about Dale in just a moment. What we won't see is what a great friend he is, the kind of friend we all want, but so few people deserve. Dale is the kind of friend who, if I called at 3 in the morning and told him I'd murdered 3 people, the next sound I'd hear was him banging on my door with a bag of lime, a shovel, and a false passport to get me out of the country. And unlike every journalist in this room, he would never ask a single question. Please enjoy learning a little bit more about your Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
This is Dale Hansen's Sports Special.
Hello, everybody. We do sport from here on.
When he stepped to the microphone for the first time in Texas, Dale Hansen changed the world we knew. The former radio disc jockey turned sportscaster from Logan, Iowa, debuted at WFAA in Dallas in the spring of 1983.
David Zerwick, writing in the Times-Herald, said Channel 8 Sports Special will be a real good show if Dale Hansen can stay out of the way. People say I'm a smart aleck, I'm a jerk, I'm opinionated, I'm controversial, and unfortunately, they're probably right sometimes. Hope I can do that when I'm 76. Right now, I just want to be 36.
It was fun to go to Cowboys training camp and say, whose skin is he going to crawl under this time?
Well, maybe I don't. We make it all up.
You do. You're the guy who told us last week, walked up to jury.
Do me a favor.
You said that Tony Casillas had a brain tumor. You guys manufacture everything.
I did not do that. I asked the question.
People just don't realize how difficult it is to work and live in Dallas and regularly push back on not only the Cowboys, but Jerry Jones.
72% of the people that we polled say they have a favorable opinion of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, think how good those numbers would be if you'd won a playoff game this decade.
Well, maybe there's some method to my madness when you get that. Just keep that bait out there.
Dale is the uncle, cousin, brother we have that in any holiday you can count on to say what all of us are thinking.
Dale has grown into the kind of voice that inspires all of us in our industry and certainly here at WFAA to look for more original, authentic voices just like his.
SMU has received the toughest penalty ever given a major college football program.
The death penalty banning a collegiate football program from competing for at least 1 year has been given out only once, to SMU in 1987. It was the result of WFAA TV's exhaustive investigation into the university's pay-for-play scandal in the 1980s. With Hansen at the wheel, the station took on the university and some of the most prominent political leaders in the state of Texas trying to get to the truth.
We asked Henry Lee Parker what contact he's had with the Stanley family. I have never met his mother and father. He says you paid him. No, Dale, that is wrong. Entirely. Did you ever send money to his parents? No. Is that your letter? Yes. Did you write it?
Everybody was lamenting, oh my God, the death penalty, the death penalty, the death penalty, you know. And then all of a sudden, Dale Hansen popped up on the screen, and he says, well, you know, they do kill you in Texas. And I mean, the minute I heard that, I just spit out my food laughing so hard because, first of all, it was true. Secondly, it was funny. And thirdly, it was direct and to the point. And that's what I came to expect from Dale Hansen.
In the 1990s, Hansen started going unplugged, using his microphone to challenge us to see that power and privilege concede nothing without a voice.
And if you don't think white privilege is a fact, you don't understand America.
Dale's Unplugged is must-see TV. I don't ever remember seeing one that didn't make me take a step back and say, wow, I never thought of it quite like that. And you know what? He's right.
If Hardy knocks on your front door to take your daughter out for a night on the town, the man you cheer now, you would shoot his ass through the glass.
In a country where people of color are 6 times more likely to be incarcerated than white people, where rank is often based on race, sex, and wealth, his commentaries beg the question, where's the acceptance if you only love those who are just like you? In 2014, University of Missouri football player Michael Sam publicly revealed that he was gay.
I'm not always comfortable when a man tells me he's gay. I don't understand his world, but I do understand that he's part of mine.
As a gay person, we really do need people like you. We need heterosexual people that speak out and say, this is not okay.
They just automatically assume that a Michael Sam can't play in the NFL if he's gay. They automatically assume that an old fat white guy from Texas would be opposed to that. And I think we're slowly breaking down these barriers on both sides.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a part of Dale that is a defender of those who are weakest.
I think if Dale's probably being honest, at least, you know, my encounters with him, he certainly likes sports. I don't think sports is what motivates him.
America's problem has come to Dallas now, and our lieutenant governor blames the peaceful protesters because our lieutenant governor is a fool.
The Unplugged commentaries have given him a platform to really talk about bigger issues.
My best friend in high school was killed in Vietnam, and Carol Meyer will be 18 years old forever, and he did not die, so that you can decide who is a patriot and who loves America more.
It was riveting television then, and it continues to be riveting television today, because it comes from a place of integrity.
My dad hit my mom once, at least only once that I ever knew about, but he broke her nose. My dad was a big man, a truck driver, huge arms, and one of the strongest men I've ever known. But never has such a big man looked so small in the eyes of a little boy.
Perhaps the greatest compliment I could give you is when a young sportscaster asks me for advice, I always tell him, go to YouTube, watch Dale Hansen.
I think you're phenomenal. You're a treasure and a tribute to this industry, and it's been an honor and a privilege to watch you do what you've been doing for so many years.
Dale Hansen has shown us at TechNet that there is nothing more powerful in this world than the well-written word delivered with authenticity and courage.
Dale used his privilege of his free speech and the pulpit of that desk on WFAA to make the world a better place. We're very, very proud, Dale, to call you one of our own.
He's been honored with the George Foster Peabody Award for Distinguished Journalism and the DuPont Columbia University's Silver Baton, broadcast's equivalent of the famed Pulitzer Prize. But for the stories he tells, the wisdom he reveals, and the peers he inspires, Dale Hansen is not seeking honor, just sharing the lessons of his lifetime.
his legacy is unparalleled, and there'll be generations that will be talking about the impact of Dale Hansen.
Thank you all very much. This is a great deal like doing a Carolyn Mungo newscast in Dallas. They put me on near the end of the program and tell me we're running long, so hurry up and make it short. And you thought you weren't going to get a shout out tonight. Forgive me, I had to keep my eye on that video a little closer than some of you, because the man who narrated that and put it together is one of the greatest storytellers I've ever known in my business, and I fired him twice. And I just want to make sure there were no hard feelings, and apparently there's not. Before I crawl up on my box, and I am bound to do that, my friend the judge and I have been friends for 35 plus years. I'm still trying to figure out why he thinks that's a good idea to tell people that I would cover up a murder for him. I guess there's a compliment in there somewhere, but I'll be damned if I know what it is. But one of my other favorite stories about the judge, and when you live a life like I do, it's always good to have friends on the bench. And I was in New York covering the Dallas Cowboys playing the Giants, and the judge called me and said, "Are you there for the game?" I said, "Of course." He said, "I'm going to be there visiting my mom." He said, "Would you like to come to dinner?" He picks me up at the hotel, and we're driving through Harlem on our way to Queens. We stop at an intersection, and there's 7 young men standing on that street corner, and not one of them looked like me. And I'm sitting there just being as calm and collected as I can be. And the judge looks over, and I promise you this is a true story. The judge looks over and he said, are you nervous? And I said, "Well, no, I'm not nervous. Not with you in that seat, I'm not." And then I looked at him. I said, "Why? Are you nervous?" He goes, "With you in that seat, I am." I said, "Well, then let's go." We went to his mom's house for dinner. She cooks like a farm wife. I weighed 193 pounds when I went in there, and I left weighing 247. Baby, you've only had 7 slices of roast beef. But I'm from Logan, Iowa. I never went to college. I have had, since I got out of the Navy in 1969, I've had 11 jobs in my professional life, and I have been fired from 8 of them. I've had 11 jobs in my life, and I have been fired from 8 of them. I don't tweet. Carolyn, I don't think, is very happy about the fact that I don't, but I figured out a long time ago that I've never thought I had anything that needed to be said or was worth saying in 280 characters or less. And every time I see a tweet on my morning feeds, I'm thinking nobody else does either. I'll wait for you to catch up on that one. I might not have crafted that joke as well as I thought I had, but I always wanted to be a disc jockey. I got a job as a disc jockey, and then I realized it's the worst job in America. So they offered me the opportunity to be a news reporter, and I fell in love with this business in 1973. It was at the height of the Watergate investigation, and I could not get enough of the work that was being done by the Washington Post and Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward. I was watching Walter Cronkite and John Chancellor report the news, and I fell in love with this business. And the work that Mr. Bernstein and Bob Woodward did back then, exposing the corruption of the Nixon administration, was eventually made into a movie where Mr. Bernstein was played by Dustin Hoffman and Bob Woodward was played by a young Robert Redford, which I believe is the first documented case of fake news in America. And then I walked. Are you still with me, Mr. Bernstein? Are you still with me, sir? I walked in to a TV station in Omaha, Nebraska in 1977, and I got hired for the job because I actually had never been inside a TV station, and of the 11 men who auditioned, business. What he taught me 40 years ago still stands up today in Dallas, Texas. And all I would say about Danny Livingston is, if you don't have a Danny Livingston in your life, I would strongly suggest you go find one. I get fired at Omaha, Nebraska, and it strikes us both tonight that of the 7 Lifetime Achievement Award winners, 2 of us worked at KMTV in Omaha, Nebraska, Tom Brokaw and me. And that's where the similarities end. But I just think it proves the point, which I have always said. Omaha, Nebraska is not the end of the world. But if you'll face west, you can sure as hell see it from there, right? I come to Dallas, Texas, I get fired again. And that's when my life changed forever. I was hired by the great Marty Haig, who has been honored by this very organization. And it was Marty Haig who encouraged me to start writing. Several years go by, the Tegna Corporation buys Channel 8, and I had heard all the horror stories about a corporate ownership group from way away from the local base, only to find out that Tegna President Dave Luigi and Ellen Crook and all the great people of Tegna have maybe been the most supportive group I've ever worked with at any point in my life. I know for a fact they don't agree with everything I say. They don't support everything I do, but they have never once denied me the opportunity to say what I believe. I speak, ladies and gentlemen, for my granddaughter. I don't write for a check. I don't speak out for an award. I write for my granddaughter. My granddaughter's black. And not a week in Texas goes by that someone doesn't remind her of what it means to be black in America. I told my granddaughter, Mackenzie, I said, I'm going to D.C., and I'm going to talk about you in front of this group. And she said, that's okay, Papa. When don't you talk about me? I write for Mackenzie because I want her to live in a better world than I grew up in and continue to live in today. I want her to have a better world than I had. And that's why it offends me. It's why it disgusts me when we are referred to as fake news, when we are referred to as the enemy of the American people. We are the people who tell the truth. We report the facts and we expose the lies. Do we make mistakes sometimes? Of course we do. But anyone who is dumb enough to confuse the occasional media mistake with media bias would be dumb enough to confuse today's weather with climate. We report the facts. We report the facts, we tell the truth, and we expose the lies. And if not us, who? We provide the checks and balance that is missing in America. Because we know the House members, not nearly enough of them will do it. We know too many senators won't do it. The cabinet has never done it. And we are the last opportunity to provide the check and balance because we are becoming perilously close to the day when our courts won't do it either. We, ladies and gentlemen, being referred to as the enemy of the American people offends me. Because we are the sons and daughters of truck drivers and teachers, cab drivers and cooks. We are the sons and daughters of those who work on our farms and in our factories, the sons and daughters of those who work on Wall Street and Main Street. Our parents are some of the richest people in America and some of the poorest people in America. We come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. We speak several languages. We follow every religion, and in some cases, no religion at all. We are not the enemy of the American people because we are the American people. We tell the truth, we report the facts, and we expose the lies by speaking truth to power. The First Amendment, freedom of the press, might be the greatest use of pen and paper ever. And as individually flawed in their personal lives as those founding fathers were, it's incredibly brilliant what they put down on paper, and it has proven to be the bedrock of this foundation and has allowed America to survive and thrive for more than 230 years now. If the day comes, if we were to abdicate our responsibility, if we were to ignore the obligation that we have to the American people, that we did not challenge the lies, we did not report the facts, we did not tell the truth, if we allow that day to come to America, then America won't matter anymore either. What we do matters. What we do is too important to give up now. And I want to close with one final thing, if I may. My wife, Chris, is here tonight, and she is the reason that I'm here tonight. We met at that TV station in Omaha, Nebraska in 1977. I asked her out on a date to see if I could win a bet from Danny and Jim Kelter and John Clark. I won $80. Only to find out that it's cost me well over $3.5 million since. But I want to leave you with this one last story, if I may, and I know I've taken plenty of your time. But everything I have, ladies and gentlemen, everything I've ever done in my life, every great person I've ever met, every great story I have ever covered, every check I have ever cashed, every award I have ever won is because of that woman right there. She stood beside me when others wouldn't. She defended me when she probably shouldn't have. And she even financially supported me when I couldn't afford to pay my own bills. That woman is the reason I'm here tonight. Because everything I am, everything I hope to be yet someday in my life, every award I've won, every dollar I have ever made, I owe to her. And I must admit, I do hate saying that publicly, especially when it's being recorded, because I'm still afraid to this day that someday her lawyer is going to read that back to me. You know? I thank you very much for this. I thank you very much. You're very kind. Thank you very much.
Wow. Aren't you glad you came tonight? You know, I didn't know I was going to be prophetic when I said we would have a little First Amendment church tonight, but I think we had a little church tonight. The RTDNF prestigious First Amendment Award champions the very essence of press freedoms. This year, we honor a truly exemplary organization. And here to bestow the honor is a very special guest. Perhaps best known for his bold, tenacious, and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism in the early 1970s, he, along with fellow Washington Post reporter Bob Woodward, uncovered the Watergate scandal. Together, they set the standard for modern investigative journalism that to this day is considered the gold standard. Please join me in welcoming CNN political analyst Carl Bernstein.
That's quite an act to follow. But he got it right. He got it absolutely right about where we are in this country today. Because it's the press and it's the First Amendment that right now is protecting this country in a way that no institution or individual in our culture is. And so we're here tonight at a deadly, serious moment, even as we celebrate. The First Amendment is not a hunting license. It's not a fishing license. Rather, it demands us to use our enormous constitutional responsibility and unique, almost unlimited power with care, fairness, and perseverance. And above all, an unshakable commitment to the best obtainable version of the truth, as I've often called it. And in doing this, the question of what is news, is perhaps the most important decision we make as reporters, editors, and news executives. And never has that question, what is news, been more important to our country and our democracy as during the Trump era. I'd like to believe that the reason CNN, under the leadership of Jeff Zucker, is receiving this singular honor tonight is that the judges recognize, either consciously or unconsciously, how much thought and effort and commitment has gone into this network's decision-making about what is news since January 20th, 2017, and how to present it. That decision-making, and from what I can see from my vantage point at CNN, the choices made by virtually every broadcast and producer and journalist covering the Trump presidency, is what has distinguished the network's coverage day in and day out. This has not been a time for a conventional news mix. Rather, the choices made about what is news at CNN have been essential to framing the national debate and produce great stories, analysis, commentary, and on-air controversy, yes, but it has helped frame this hugely important, crucial to our future in this country debate by our decisions at CNN, by Jeff Zucker's leadership, about what is news. One thing CNN's decisions have not done is to give its viewers fake news. I cannot remember a period in our national history when the news on a network has been less fake or contrived or rooted in manufactured controversy. And my personal belief, based on many conversations with people who have been around Donald Trump for years, is that he understands that. And that this fact that we are reporting real news, which he knows, is the source of so much of his rage and his demagogy. Yes, we've attempted to follow the money and follow the lies, but also to follow the policies and pronouncements and actions of the president in every sphere, and always with that goal of the best obtainable version of the truth, and with another crucial element about what is news: context. Because it's that gray matter. News isn't black and white, but it's in that gray area, in that contextual area, and our presentation of what is news, often in that gray area, that we really inform our readers, our viewers, and those that we serve as journalists. We haven't been perfect. No news organization can claim that, and it would be grandiose to make such a claim. And finding the right tone, particularly during this presidency, is a particularly difficult aspect of covering Donald Trump and his White House and his administration. No news organization has achieved perfect pitch in this uniquely challenging atmosphere. But every day, it goes back to deciding what is news. And I really believe that CNN has led the way in determining what is real news in this era. At the White House Correspondents Association dinner a while back, Bob Woodward and I spoke, and I said that the reporting on this presidency has been the greatest of my lifetime by the greatest number of news organizations. And I think tonight is a time that we should remember this moment of being together. Because I don't know of a moment, as a journalist, which I've been for more than 55 years, I don't know of a moment that's more perilous for the country, for reporting, for the truth, and for the First Amendment, because that First Amendment and its core meaning and what it says about who we are as a people is what our mission is. Not a hunting license, not a fishing license, but once again to determine what it is that we know through our reporting, through our efforts and perseverance is the real news. So, under Jeff Zucker and his leadership, I think CNN has grasped something from the beginning about this presidency and about this moment. And let's take a look at the videotape and get an idea, perhaps a little better than what I've said, exactly how that's been accomplished.
To act upon one's convictions while others wait.
I want to get to a CNN exclusive right now.
Here's what we know this hour.
To create a positive force in a world where cynics abound.
Nelson Mandela is free.
Africa!
There is elation across Thailand.
Do not get pushed around.
Touchdown, confirmed.
For the American people whose thirst for understanding has made this venture possible, I dedicate the cable news network.
Something is happening outside.
We will deliver Brexit.
The base needs jobs.
I think in a world that has become so divided, it's imperative that CNN always be there to tell the truth.
It's important that all of us are informed about things. We will go there to get the story.
Happening now, breaking news.
What is relevant?
There, another shot.
What matters? We are absolutely going there.
When you've seen that, you have to do something about it.